The clock on the wall has a second hand that ticks too loudly for a room this careful. Someone has tried to soften it, wedged a strip of folded paper behind the frame so it won't rattle. It still does. Every minute, the paper gives a faint, dry scrape, like a match being struck and failing to catch. The sound repeats until it stops meaning anything, until it starts meaning everything. A man at the far end of the table turns a pencil between his fingers. Not writing, just turning it, end over end, until the paint warms under his thumb and the wood begins to shine. He checks the same page twice, eyes moving along rows that don't change. He is waiting for the numbers to rearrange themselves out of courtesy. There is a kettle somewhere behind a door that won't be opened. The water inside it refuses to boil in a way that feels personal. It hisses, then quiets, then hisses again, never rising into the kind of noise that demands attention. Only enough to say it is there, only enough to fill the spaces between breaths. A radio sits on a shelf by the window, its cloth speaker worn smooth in one corner. A thin wire runs from it along the wall like a vein. The set is on, but whoever tuned it kept the volume just below comfort, so that every syllable needs effort. The voice on the other end drifts in and out, flattened by distance and interference, as if it comes from a place half swallowed by snow. Somewhere in the building a telephone rings once, not twice. One ring, then silence, as if the caller remembered something too late, as if they decided not to. The men do not look up. A door opens on the other side of the room and closes again with the smallest apology of sound. Boots cross the floor in a slow, practiced rhythm. Not hurried, not casual. The footsteps carry a faint grit with them, each step a careful grind, and then they stop at the threshold where the light changes. A folder is placed on the table without ceremony, paper against wood. The simplest impact. The sound feels heavy anyway. Hands reach for it, then hesitate. Just a pause, the length of a heartbeat. Not because anyone fears the contents, because the act of opening it would make time move forward in a way they can't reverse. Someone clears his throat, once, softly. It's the kind of sound meant to reset a room, to signal that the waiting has been officially acknowledged. No one speaks after it. The moment sits there, unclaimed. Outside the window, nothing seems urgent. The sky is flat and pale, stretched too thin, the color of metal left out overnight. A line of trees stands motionless along the horizon, dark strokes that could be painted. If there is wind, it's somewhere else. If there are engines, they're too far to identify. The world holds its breath as if it can't remember why it should exhale. One man reaches for his cup of coffee and finds it cold. He lifts it anyway, takes a sip that does nothing, sets it down in the same exact place. The ring it leaves on the table is already there, an old circle overlapping a new one. The mark is familiar enough to be comforting, proof that mornings have happened before this one. A cigarette is tapped against an ashtray. Once, twice, not lit, just the gesture of preparation, as if the body has memorized the motions for when the mind doesn't know what to do. The pencil turns again. The radio voice fades, returns, fades, returns. In the quiet, a thin mechanical click comes from the wall clock, and then another, each one identical, each one shaving something away. A man at the center of the table finally touches the folder, fingers flat against the cover. He does not open it. He slides it toward himself by a few inches, slow enough that the paper inside cannot shift. He looks at the seal as if it might dissolve without his help. Then he glances up, not at anyone in particular, and says very calmly, as though naming a routine task, "We still have time." The words hang in the room like steam that doesn't rise. No one argues. No one agrees. Because in the space between the ticking and the radio hush, time keeps moving anyway, quietly, faithfully toward the edge, and there isn't much of it left. The place has a name, but nobody uses it in this room. It sits on the outskirts of a town whose streets still sweep themselves every morning. A town where shopkeepers still lift shutters and set out bread as if the day is only a day. If you walked through the center just after dawn, you would hear metal pails clinking, a dog barking at nothing, the soft gossip of carts rolling over stone. You would smell coal smoke, damp wool, weak coffee. The rhythm of life would feel intact, even reassuring, like a promise. Here, On the edge of that ordinary world, the building holds a different kind of routine. Cleaner, quieter, tighter. The hallways are kept too neat for comfort. The windows are covered in a way that lets light in but keeps eyes out. The air tastes faintly of ink, oil, and something metallic that never quite leaves. In one corridor, a clerk sits at a narrow desk under a lamp with a green shade, stamping forms until his wrist loosens and his mind floats away. The stamp falls, lifts, falls again, each thud muffled by the stack of paper beneath. When he pauses, it isn't because the work is done. It's because the ink pad has started to dry, and he needs to press harder to keep the mark clear. He wets his thumb and rubs the edge of the pad like that will bring it back to life. A messenger passes with a leather satchel slung across his shoulder, the strap cutting a clean diagonal line across his coat. He walks with the calm of someone trained never to run unless ordered, and even then, only at the right speed. He nods to no one. He carries the kind of paper that doesn't belong in pockets. In the room at the end of the hall, the clock continues its work. The men around the table have been here for hours, though if asked, they would claim only minutes. They wear uniforms that have been brushed recently, collars set straight, buttons shining too faintly to count as pride. The cleanliness is another form of denial. If the fabric is kept orderly, perhaps the world will follow. On the table, maps, folded and refolded until the creases have become permanent decisions. The paper has been handled so often it feels soft at the edges, like cloth. Pencils rest in neat parallel lines sharpened to points that break too easily. An ashtray holds 2 crushed cigarette ends and a small mountain of gray, as carefully piled as if it matters. A telephone stands near the wall, its cord looping like a question mark. It is not rung again, but every few minutes someone glances at it without meaning to, eyes flicking toward the handset the way a tongue checks a sore tooth. Nobody touches it. A second radio has been brought in, a newer set, larger, with a sturdier dial. The volume stays low. No one wants a voice to suddenly rise and change the air. The men prefer the radio as a texture, a murmur that suggests connection without delivering consequences. A young officer, too young to have old habits, too tired to form new ones, leans over a chart and traces a line with his finger as if he is reading a scripture. His nail catches on a crease and he flinches slightly, as though the paper has betrayed him. He pulls his hand back and wipes his fingers on his trouser seam, leaving a faint smudge of graphite. At the far side of the table, an older man opens the folder at last, just enough to check the top page. He does it slowly, with the care of someone handling something that might spill. His eyes move across the text. He nods once, a tiny motion that could mean anything: approval, doubt, exhaustion. He closes it again. The seal remains broken, but the room pretends it still holds. "There's no change," he says, and the phrase is offered like a soothing drink. No change. No need to rearrange chairs. No need to stand. No need to send anyone running down the hall. The sentence settles into the room and allows everyone to keep sitting exactly where they are. A pot of coffee is brought in by a soldier whose face is blank with practiced invisibility. The pot is dented on one side. The cups clink softly as he sets them down. The smell rises, bitter, thin, honest. It belongs to mornings everywhere, not just here. "Thank you," someone murmurs out of habit. The soldier leaves without answering, and the door closes with the same careful softness as before. It is the sound of a place trying not to admit it has doors at all. Beyond the walls, the day continues to behave. A truck passes somewhere outside, one of many. Its engine note steady, unremarkable. From the town faintly comes the distant peal of a church bell marking the hour, the same bell that has marked every hour for generations. The bell does not know what is being discussed in this building. It rings anyway, faithfully, as if time is still a neutral thing. At the table, they return to familiar gestures. A pencil turned, a map smoothed, a cigarette lit and forgotten halfway through. A man adjusts his watch even though it is already accurate. Another loosens his collar and then tightens it again, uncomfortable with comfort. Conversation stays small on purpose. A remark about the weather, how the cloud cover might hold. A comment about a supply request that should have been approved yesterday. An aside about a man in another office who always misfiles reports. The words circle around the center of the room like moths around a lamp. never daring to touch the heat. Every so often, someone says something hopeful in the careful tone of someone offering a superstition. If it holds until evening, we'll have a clearer picture by midday. They wouldn't do it in this condition. The sentences are not arguments. They're cushions. Each one is placed gently under the weight of the next minute. But the small irregularities keep arriving, quiet as dust. A report comes in with a timestamp that doesn't match the previous one. Not by much, just enough to make a man squint and check the ink twice. A message is relayed down the hall and returns with a correction. A number changed by a single digit. A runner appears at the door, breath controlled, eyes too bright, and asks for a signature that normally would have waited until after lunch. No one reacts sharply. No one calls it what it is. They take the paper, sign, stamp, file. Routine is a spell. Near noon, the radio voice changes. Barely. The cadence tightens as if the man speaking has started reading faster without realizing it. The words are still calm, still measured, but there is less space between them, less room for air. A few heads tilt slightly toward the speaker cloth. Not alarm. Attention pretending to be casual. The clock ticks. The second hand keeps scraping the paper behind the frame. A man at the center of the table looks at the window again. The sky has darkened by a shade. Nothing dramatic, only enough to make the room's lamplight feel less like comfort and more like necessity. He sets his hand flat on the map, palm down as if holding something in place. And in a voice kept deliberately steady, too steady like a glass held carefully so it won't shake, he says, "Let's just wait for the next update." As if waiting is still a choice. As if time is not already deciding for them. The first thing no one mentions is the sound. It arrives so gradually that it's easy to mistake it for something ordinary. A faint vibration under the floor, like a heavy vehicle passing at a distance. Then another, softer still. The kind of sensation that lives more in the bones than in the ears. Chairs do not rattle, cups do not shift. If the building notices, it keeps it to itself. A clerk in the outer office pauses mid-stamp, frowns, and presses the pad again harder than necessary. The mark comes out blurred. He turns the page over and stamps it anyway. The record will say what it needs to say. In the main room, someone asks for the time. A watch is checked. Another. They are all still aligned, their hands marching together with obedient precision. Nothing has broken the rhythm yet. The question dissolves without an answer. The radio murmurs. A phrase repeats. Not because it is urgent, but because it hasn't been fully heard the first time. Static curls around the words like smoke, softening their edges. A man reaches to adjust the dial, then thinks better of it and pulls his hand back. Interference can be blamed. Clarity cannot. A runner arrives with a slip of paper folded too many times. He holds it out, waits. The paper is taken, unfolded, read. A brow creases for the briefest moment, then smooths itself. The runner is dismissed with a nod that means nothing and everything. Delayed, someone says lightly as if it's a train. A pencil snaps. The sound is sharp enough to turn heads, and the man holding it apologizes immediately, embarrassed by the disruption. He reaches for another pencil from the neat row, sharper than the last. The broken one is set aside, placed carefully parallel to the rest, as if even failure should be orderly. On the map, a small marker has been nudged out of place. No one remembers touching it. A fingertip slides it back where it belongs, aligning it with a thin penciled line that has been erased and redrawn so many times the paper is thin there. The map accepts the correction without complaint. Conversation drifts to safer ground. Someone mentions a shipment that should have arrived yesterday. Another replies that logistics have been unreliable for weeks, nothing new. A third laughs softly at a story he's heard too many times, a familiar punchline landing out of habit rather than humor. The room breathes in unison. Outside, the bell rings again. Noon. The sound floats through the air and fades, and for a moment it feels like an anchor, proof that the world still agrees on what time it is. Then the telephone rings. Once. It stops. No one moves. Eyes shift toward it in stages, as if they're afraid of arriving too early. The handset rests where it was, untouched, patient. After a few seconds that stretch thin, someone exhales a laugh meant to break the spell. "Wrong number," he says and reaches for his coffee. The coffee is gone. The cup is empty, ringed with brown at the bottom. He tilts it anyway, as if more might appear. It doesn't. A report is read aloud, its language careful and precise. Coordinates, times, conditions. Everything sounds correct. Everything sounds contained. The voice reading it does not rise or fall. The words slide into the room and lie there inert. But a phrase lingers longer than it should. A word that suggests adjustment. A number followed by approximate. Someone asks for clarification. The answer comes back quickly, rehearsed. Within expected variation. The explanation is accepted, because accepting it is easier than pulling at the thread that word offers. In the hallway, footsteps pass faster than before. Not running, never running. Just a quicker pace, a tighter rhythm. Papers rustle. A door closes less gently than intended, then opens again as if correcting itself. The radio voice shifts again, ever so slightly. There's a pause between sentences now that wasn't there earlier. A pause that feels like someone listening on the other end before continuing. A man at the table notices his hands have gone still. He flexes his fingers one by one, restores circulation, returns them to the map. The paper is warm beneath his palm. This happens every time, someone says with the confidence of repetition. Nothing ever comes of it. The sentence hangs there, heavy with history it refuses to examine. Another vibration passes through the floor. Stronger this time, but still deniable. Someone glances at the ceiling, then smiles faintly, as if amused by his own imagination. Construction, he says. No one disagrees. A clock clicks. Another minute gone. The folder on the table shifts slightly as air moves through the room, its pages whispering to each other in a way that almost sounds like warning if you listen too closely. No one listens that closely, because acknowledging the signs would require them to change what they are doing. And what they are doing, waiting, repeating, trusting routine, still feels safer than moving. For now, time begins to behave differently, but no one agrees on when it changed. The clocks still tick at the same pace. The bell outside will ring again when it's supposed to. Watches remain synchronized. Yet something in the room tightens, as if the minutes have narrowed, becoming thinner and harder to hold. A chair scrapes back slightly as a man stands, then hesitates, unsure why he rose at all. He adjusts his jacket instead, smoothing a sleeve that was already smooth, and sits again. The sound of the chair returning to the floor is louder than it should be. Another message arrives, this one carried by hand, not wire. The runner's face is composed, but his breath is not. He waits longer than necessary before releasing the paper, as if hoping someone will tell him to stop, to take it back, to pretend this delivery never happened. The paper is unfolded. Read. Read again. The words are ordinary. That's the problem. They describe positions that have shifted slightly, timings that have slipped by margins small enough to defend. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that demands alarms. But the language has changed just enough to suggest that something, somewhere, is no longer waiting. A man clears his throat. We should confirm, he says. Not urgently, just carefully. Someone else nods. We will. The telephone is closer now. Or perhaps they are. A hand hovers above it, fingers relaxed, uncurled. The receiver looks heavier than before, its presence newly defined. Picking it up would mean hearing a voice without delay, without static to soften it, hearing something finished. The hand withdraws. Let's give it a few minutes, someone says, and the suggestion is met with immediate, almost grateful agreement. A few minutes is manageable. A few minutes keeps everything reversible. The radio continues, but no one is listening to the content anymore, only to the rhythm. It has lost its easy flow. Sentences end abruptly. There are gaps that feel like doors closing somewhere far away. In the outer office, the clerk stamps a page and realizes he has skipped a line. He stares at the error, considers fixing it, then stamps the next line instead. The mistake is small, correctable. Later, back in the room, a map is turned slightly, rotated just enough to be better aligned with the window. The movement reveals a crease underneath that no one remembers making. It runs diagonally across an area that was, until recently, considered stable. A finger traces it, slow and unconscious. That doesn't look right, the young officer says, immediately wishing he hadn't. The room stills, not sharply but noticeably. Heads turn, not toward him but toward the map, as if his voice has made it visible. The older man leans forward, studies the paper for a long moment. He does not frown. He does not smile. "It's within tolerance," he says finally. The phrase is familiar, reliable. It has carried them through many quiet hours. The young officer nods and retreats into silence, his doubt folded neatly away. Outside, the light shifts again. The sky darkens another shade, enough that the lamps hum faintly as they compensate. No storm, no drama, just the slow closing of a door that no one is watching. The telephone rings, this time twice. Every movement stops, not in panic, but in recognition. This is different. 2 rings cannot be dismissed as accident. 2 rings mean someone waited through the first. No one reaches for it immediately. The ringing stops. The silence afterward is heavier than the sound was. A man laughs once sharply, then stops. "They'll call back," he says too quickly. No one answers. A decision hangs in the air, not a declared one, not a recorded one, just the quiet understanding that something could still be done if someone chose to disturb the order of things. The folder is opened again, further this time. Pages are turned. A pen is uncapped, then capped again. Ink remains unused. Somewhere outside, an engine starts and does not shut off. The clock ticks. And in the space where action might still matter, the room remains exactly as it is, balanced on a narrow ledge of seconds that is already beginning to crumble. It doesn't announce itself. There is no sound sharp enough to cut the air, no movement sudden enough to force attention. What changes happens quietly, almost politely, as if the day is asking permission to proceed. The pen, left uncapped on the table, dries at the tip. No one notices. A message arrives through the radio. Not new information, just a confirmation of something already assumed. The words are delivered evenly, without emphasis, without urgency. They land in the room and are absorbed into the existing wait, indistinguishable from the rest of the waiting. Someone nods as if agreement has been reached, though no question was asked. The telephone does not ring again. That, too, is taken as reassurance. A man checks his watch and says the time out loud. Another repeats it, correcting him by a minute. They laugh softly at the discrepancy, and both adjust their watches to match the wall clock, trusting the larger mechanism over their own. The adjustment is small. It matters anyway. In the outer corridor, a door that usually stays open is pulled closed to keep out a draft. The latch clicks into place. The sound echoes longer than expected, as if the hallway itself has gone hollow. Inside the room, chairs are shifted, not because anyone is preparing to leave, but because discomfort has finally been acknowledged. A coat is removed and folded over the back of a chair. Sleeves are rolled down again, then back up. The body keeps searching for a position that will make sense of the feeling it refuses to name. A runner appears at the doorway, then stops. He does not enter. He waits, uncertain, holding nothing at all. After a few seconds, he steps back out of sight, deciding, on his own authority, that this is not the moment. The choice is tiny. It passes unrecorded. It cannot be undone. At the table, the older man turns a page in the folder and pauses. This page is different, not in content, in tone. The language is final in a way that does not raise its voice. Verbs settle into place instead of hovering. Options narrow without ever being crossed out. The paper feels heavier between his fingers, as if it has absorbed the weight of every decision not made before it. He does not read it aloud. He closes the folder. Across the table, someone inhales as if preparing to speak, then exhales and says nothing. The moment passes. The opportunity moves on without him. A vibration passes through the floor again. Longer this time. Steadier. It no longer feels like something passing by. It feels like something moving into position. "Is that?" someone begins. "It's fine," comes the reply, immediate, reflexive. "It's already accounted for. Already accounted for." The phrase settles over the room like dust. The radio goes silent for a full 5 seconds. When it resumes, the voice sounds farther away, as if the distance between here and there has increased without warning. The man speaking does not repeat himself this time. He continues forward, assuming he has been heard. A hand reaches for the telephone at last. It stops an inch short. The man's fingers curl slowly, deliberately, and withdraw. The receiver remains untouched, its weight now unquestioned. Picking it up would not ask a question anymore. It would confirm something already in motion. No one says so. The clock ticks past a minute that will not be remembered. Outside, the engine that started earlier continues to run. It has been idling long enough that the sound has blended into the background, mistaken for permanence. No one wonders why it hasn't shut off. A chair scrapes back again, this time without hesitation. The man who stands does not sit back down. He walks to the window and peers through the covered glass, trying to see without being seen. His posture is rigid, careful, as if the wrong angle might invite attention from the other side. He does not report what he sees. He steps away from the window and returns to his place, slower than before. On the map, a marker is nudged. Not corrected, not aligned. Just nudged. The change is barely perceptible, but it crosses a line drawn in pencil weeks ago and never meant to be crossed without discussion. No one notices the exact moment it happens. They notice only that, afterward, the map no longer looks quite right. Someone finally asks, "Should we?" The sentence ends there. No one finishes it. The folder stays closed. The telephone stays silent. The radio continues. And without ceremony, without sound, without any single decision that can be pointed to later, the room passes through a boundary it never agreed to name. From this side of it, waiting had still felt like control. From the other side, it is simply momentum. Unstoppable, already moving, already too late to stop. The room grows quiet in a way that has nothing to do with discipline. Not the alert silence of attention, not the respectful silence of waiting for instruction, but the hollow kind, where sound has decided it no longer needs to explain itself. Even the clock seems subdued now, its ticking no longer sharp, more absorbed by the air than striking against it. Someone exhales slowly, deliberately, as if reminding the body how breathing works. No one speaks. The radio continues, but its presence has thinned. The voice no longer fills space, it merely occupies it, like a shadow that stays even when you stop looking at it. Words arrive without urgency and pass without effect. Whatever they might have changed has already been decided elsewhere. The telephone remains untouched. Its silence is complete now, not the expectant pause of something about to happen, but the settled quiet of something finished trying. The cord lies slack against the wall, no longer taut with possibility. A cup is lifted, then set back down without a sip. Hands rest on the table, palms flat, fingers spread, as if feeling for vibration through the wood. There is none they can admit to. Outside, the engine stops. The absence of its sound is more noticeable than the noise ever was. The sudden quiet presses inward, as if the building itself has leaned closer to listen. A man glances at the clock and then away again, unwilling to measure the moment too precisely. Naming time now would give it shape, and shape would give it meaning. The light shifts one final time, not darker, just different. The kind of change that would go unnoticed on any other day. Lamps hum, then steady, their glow settling into corners that had remained untouched until now. The map lies open, but no one looks at it anymore. The markers are where they are. Whatever correction might have been made no longer belongs to this moment. The paper has accepted its final arrangement. A distant sound drifts in through the walls, too far away to identify, too faint to demand interpretation. It could be anything. It could be nothing. No one offers a name for it. Breaths synchronize again, slow and shallow. Someone's chair creaks as he shifts his weight, then goes still. A pen rolls a few centimeters across the table and stops against a fold in the map, trapped there by chance. No one reaches for it. The room feels suspended, like a held note that has gone on just a fraction too long. The men inside sense it, not consciously, not with fear, but with a quiet physical certainty, the way the body knows when balance has been lost even before the fall begins. There are no more decisions to delay, no more questions that would change the answer, only the space before something arrives, only the waiting that no longer has a purpose. The clock ticks, the radio breathes, and for a final fragile instant, just before history tips forward, the world holds perfectly still.